They called her a miracle. Then they called her a curse. But what they never understood, what they would never meant to understand, is that Emma Richter wasn't just a child. She was a mirror held up to the darkest patterns in human behavior, and once you looked into her eyes, you saw yourself too clearly. In 1873 Milwaukee, amid the soot-stained chimneys and the smell of yeast from the breweries, a pale, gray-eyed girl watched from her window. She counted your footsteps, memorized your secrets, and when the numbers aligned, when your life or your death became inevitable, she told you. She never smiled when she said it. She didn't cry. She didn't laugh. Emma Richter simply calculated your fate with the same calm certainty a man might measure flour for bread. And when she spoke, something inside you cracked, because she wasn't guessing. She knew. But that winter, her quiet calculations started tearing the town apart. Men began to die. Affairs were uncovered. Fires burned homes to ash. And at the center of it all, a child with a leather-bound journal filled with numbers no one dared to decipher. What if I told you this wasn't just a case of a gifted girl lost to legend? What if I told you that Emma was the first known example of a mind that cracked the code of human behavioral inevitability, that she didn't vanish, she was erased? You've been told all your life that free will is real, that chaos rules, that people are unpredictable. But what if that was the first lie? Stay with me. This story doesn't just expose the past. It opens a doorway into your present, into your mind. Because once you understand what Emma saw, you can never unsee it. She decoded us, and now I'm going to decode her. But before we dive deeper, I need you to look around your own life for a second. Your habits, your secrets, your fears. Because if Emma were watching you, she already knows your pattern. And she's about to speak.
It started with a bird, a dead bird to be precise, placed neatly on the Richter family's doorstep. Emma saw it first. While her parents shrieked and shooed her away, she didn't flinch. Instead, she stared at it, head tilted, lips slightly parted, as though decoding a message only she could hear. "They're warning us," she said flatly. "Who?" her father asked. "The ones in the cellar who pretend to live above." They dismissed it as a child's imagination. But Emma had already begun plotting, not for revenge, but for understanding. You see, in Emma's world, nothing was random. The bird wasn't a threat, it was a clue. And by the time the second one came, a crow with its wings clipped, Emma had mapped out a sequence: 3 birds, 3 nights, 3 victims, all within 2.1 kilometers of her home. No connection between them, the police said, but Emma knew better. She dug deeper. Each victim had a tie to the old Ashford Institute, the long-abandoned private school just outside town. Burned down in 1921, it was dismissed as local lore, ghost stories, rumors of a family who ran it like a prison, children vanishing, screams in the forest, no convictions, no names, just ash and whispers. But Emma found what others didn't know how to look for: records buried in post-fire insurance claims, unpaid property taxes reissued under phantom companies, journals written in code using Fibonacci patterns and lunar cycles. Every detail painted a picture darker than any legend dared. The Ashford family hadn't just run a school, they had run a machine. A behavioral training facility masked as education. Children were tested, psychologically broken and rebuilt using pain, deprivation, and forced loyalty. The brightest were selected for something else, something Emma couldn't yet decipher. And when she shared this with her mother, the next day her dog disappeared. The day after that, her father was found unconscious in the brewery. No signs of trauma, just a glass shattered mid-pour and a look of frozen fear on his face. Emma didn't cry. She opened her notebook and wrote 2 words. They know. This wasn't a game anymore, it was a reaction, a system correcting for a glitch. She had breached something sacred, something hidden, something designed to remain buried. And yet, the more they tried to scare her, the clearer the path became, because Emma wasn't afraid of monsters. She was becoming one.
They made their first mistake when they let Emma live. She knew it. She wrote it down. If I was a threat, they would have erased me. But they need me. Or they're watching me. Or worse, they think I'm one of them. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, Emma visited the ruins of the Ashford Institute, alone, with nothing but a flashlight and a crowbar. The building was fenced off by rusted iron, but she had already mapped the gaps. Entry wasn't the challenge. Surviving was. Inside, the air smelled of scorched wood and earth, not decay, something fresher, as though someone had been there recently, moved things, cleaned certain corners, but left dust elsewhere. Emma pressed her fingers into the soot-covered floor and felt a ridge beneath, a groove, a trap-door. She dug around it. Her hands bled, nail fingers cracked, but she smiled, because the deeper she went, the clearer the truth became. This was not just a burned school. It was a vault. She pried it open. The staircase below was stone, untouched by fire, cold, leading down into what appeared to be a surgical room, perfectly preserved. Metal restraints on the table, shelves labeled in Latin, murals on the wall depicting diagrams of the human mind, altered with handwritten annotations in a different ink. There was even a file cabinet. Emma opened it. It screeched like something alive. Inside were folders, yellowed but intact, names, ages, photographs, black and white portraits of children staring directly into the camera, all wearing the same uniform, and on the final page of each file, the same phrase written in red ink: reprogrammed, released, observe. Some were marked, failed, self-termination, success, transferred, escaped, location unknown. But one was different. Her mother's maiden name. Emma's hands trembled. She flipped to the last page. Subject: C. Renwick. Status: reprogrammed. Assignment: Family Initiation Unit. Objective: generate replacement. And then it hit her. Her mother, the paranoia, the surveillance, the overly strict routines and randomly administered tests, the way she never told Emma about her childhood,
The therapy sessions she insisted Emma attend in secret. Emma wasn't being raised, she was being cultivated. And if that was true, she wasn't the only one. Suddenly, there was movement behind her, a flicker, a scrape. Emma turned slowly, flashlight raised, and saw a girl, no older than 10, dressed in a blood-stained uniform, staring, silent, motionless. But when Emma moved closer, the girl mimicked her exactly, step for step, like a reflection. Only her eyes were empty, like no one was home. And then a voice crackled from a hidden speaker in the ceiling. "Return the subject to position. You are not cleared for level 2 observation." Emma froze. A red light blinked above the surgical table. "Compliance will be rewarded." She didn't move. Not until the speaker buzzed again. "Or your father will not wake up." That's when she understood. This wasn't just an experiment that had gone wrong. It was still ongoing. She was already inside it. And the rules, they were being rewritten for her.
The night the power went out, Emma was ready. She had mapped every outage in the past 6 months, seemingly random blackouts that always followed a distinct pattern: 3 minutes before midnight, 2 minutes of silence, then a single flicker before the grid resumed. Only this time, it didn't. Emma lit her lantern, an old brass oil lamp she had restored herself, and walked to the basement. Not her family's, but the Ashford Institute's, whose entrance she had found beneath the roots of an elm tree, hidden by rotted vines and 30 years of forest debris. She descended the stone steps slowly, feeling the air change. Cooler, heavier, vibrating with a hum too low to be natural. There behind a rusted iron gate was what the stories had never captured. Not ruins, not remains, but a functioning facility. Metal operating tables still gleaming, paper charts stacked in neat rows, old typewriters filled with reports from Session 49A and Specimen Delta 6. And surveillance equipment. Antique, yes, but wired into something alive. Red lights blinked, magnetic tapes rolled, and on the wall a nameplate that chilled her. Dr. Eloise Ashford, Director of Cognitive Conditioning. We do not create killers, we uncover them. Emma's hands trembled, not from fear, but from recognition. She had seen this name before. In a book her grandfather once hid beneath his mattress, a black ledger filled with child names, one of which was circled in red. Thomas Richter. Her father. She turned the page. Another name. Circled. Emma Richter. Emma stared. This wasn't a myth. This was her inheritance. Suddenly footsteps echoed. Slow. Deliberate. She extinguished the lantern and melted into the shadows. A figure emerged from the corridor. A man in a long coat, face half covered by a surgical mask. He walked to the center of the room and whispered, "The Richter gene has activated. She found the gate." Then he turned to the wall and pressed a switch. The wall slid open. Behind it, hundreds of tanks filled with fluid, each one containing a child, sleeping, monitored, numbered, and some of them were moving. Emma didn't scream. She didn't run. She stepped forward, out of the shadows, and spoke clearly. "I was made here. Now I'll finish what you started." The man didn't look surprised, only nodded, and said, "Then it's time for the trials to begin." The trial chamber wasn't built like a lab. It resembled a cathedral. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, supported by black iron beams carved with symbols Emma couldn't decipher. Flickering sodium lights bathed the room in a sickly yellow hue. At the far end, behind glass reinforced a dozen times over, were 3 doors, each marked with a Roman numeral, I, and I. The man, who still hadn't told her his name, handed her a file, thick, frayed edges, a seal on the front. Ashford Family Trust Generation X candidate, EMR 13. Inside, her medical history, every childhood drawing, her psychiatric evaluations from when she was 5, ones she didn't even know had occurred. And on the last page, scrawled in red ink, Trial 1, The Mirror Room, Objective, Self-Recognition. Hazards, cognitive dissociation, identity fragmentation, and hallucinatory feedback. Emma exhaled slowly. "I'm not here to play your games," she said, voice steady. The man, who still hadn't told her his name, stepped forward. "You already are. The Ashfords bred you for this. The Richter line is not one of resistance, Emma. It is one of completion." The door labeled I creaked open. Emma stepped inside. Trial 1, The Mirror Room. The room was circular, seamless, like being inside a silver sphere. Mirrors on every surface, even the floor and ceiling. Wherever she looked, her reflection followed. Except, not all of them moved at the same time. One, off to her left, smiled when she didn't. Another blinked twice, though Emma hadn't blinked at all. Then a voice, not external, inside her head. "Who are you, EMR 13? Her heartbeat pounded. She turned slowly, watching the mirrors for inconsistencies. That's when one of the reflections stepped out. Not shattered, not crawled, just exited. It looked like her, exactly, but wore a version of her mother's nurse uniform from the old institute photos. The one Emma had never seen outside that single grainy snapshot in a newspaper clipping. "You don't know what they did to her, do you?" the reflection whispered. Emma backed up. "Who are you? The real question, Emma, is who are you if not the daughter of a fabrication?" Suddenly, the mirrors warped. Dozens of versions of her appeared, some crying, some screaming, some covered in blood. One held a scalpel, another a doll. One stood silent, older, with eyes as hollow as the tanks below. The floor pulsed. Her knees buckled. Then, a single phrase cut through the static. "Name the lie they told you, and you may leave." She steadied herself, thought, remembered her grandfather's bedtime stories about how her father escaped a terrible place and how she was nothing like him. She looked into the glass and said, "The lie was that I was normal." The room shattered. Mirrors exploded inward, yet she wasn't cut. Instead, everything fell silent. She stood in darkness. A soft bell rang. Outside, the man checked a monitor. Trial 1. Passed. He smiled beneath his mask and whispered, "She's ready." The chamber smelled of formaldehyde and electricity. As Emma stepped deeper into the vault of human containment, her eyes adjusted to the eerie green glow from the tanks. Each capsule pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Faces floated behind glass, boys, girls, toddlers, some with open eyes that didn't blink. Monitors buzzed with coded patterns. And scrawled on the walls in chalky red handwriting were dates, most from decades ago, but some from last month. Emma's breath hitched. These weren't relics. They were living experiments. "Are they alive?" she whispered. The man in the coat,
tall, thin, unmoving, finally turned to her. His voice echoed like a sermon in an empty church. "They are potential, like you once were, until we lost your father, until he ran." Emma clenched her fists. "My father wasn't a killer. He escaped your sick games." The man nodded slowly. "True, but not before unlocking the door inside his mind. You carry the same key. That's why you're here." She stepped toward one of the tanks, subject B-17, a small boy, no older than 10, wires weaved into his skull. A bandage covered one eye, and in his hand he clutched something, a wooden toy soldier. Emma froze. That toy? Identical to the one in her childhood box. The realization crashed into her. This wasn't just a lab. This was a harvest of generations. Her lineage wasn't random. The Ashfords had been breeding candidates for decades, watching bloodlines, pairing subjects like livestock. Her family tree was a design, not a coincidence. "What do you want from me?" she demanded. The man stepped closer. "We need you to lead, to unlock the next phase. You're the only one with Richter's resilience and Ashford's cognitive elasticity. Your blood is the bridge." Suddenly, alarms wailed. B-17's tank glowed red. He was awake. His eye flicked open, and then the glass shattered. Fluid poured out in waves as the child collapsed to the floor. But he didn't scream, didn't cough. He stood and looked at Emma. "Help me," he whispered. Emma moved instinctively, but the man in the coat raised his hand. "Touch him, and the imprint is permanent." She didn't care. She rushed forward, catching the boy in her arms. He was cold, terrified, and human. "Who are you?" she asked gently. He looked up. "They said you were my sister." Emma stared. "What?" But then, the walls trembled. Far above them, explosions echoed. The man hissed, "Your friends followed you here. You led them to the nest." Emma turned, horrified. "No, I came alone." The man pulled a lever. Sirens blared. Lights turned crimson. "Then the Institute has been compromised. Protocol Omega." Doors slammed shut across the hallway. Flames roared through a vent. Monitors shattered. But one screen still worked. It flickered to life. And on it, grainy footage of the Ashford family, decades ago, surrounding a birthday cake. In the corner, a small girl with hazel eyes. Emma. Not a visitor, not an intruder, but one of them. And as the boy beside her clung to her hand, a speaker above crackled. "Welcome home, Subject Alpha." Emma stepped into the corridor beyond the sliding wall, her footsteps soundless on the cold, metallic floor. The man in the surgical mask followed without a word, as if escorting royalty or a weapon newly activated. The air thickened with the scent of chemicals and decay, faint but unmistakable. Along the hallway, each tank held a child suspended in a viscous blue liquid. Monitors beside them pulsed with biometric data, heart rates, brain waves, even emotional indicators. These weren't corpses. They were subjects, alive, maintained, watched. Emma paused in front of tank number 018. Inside floated a girl who looked just like her, down to the mole beneath her left eye and the faint scar on her lip. She turned to the man. "Clones?" He shook his head. "Echoes. Not of you. For you." "What does that mean?" He reached into his coat and pulled out a rusted key, then gestured toward a locked vault door at the end of the hallway. "Open it. You'll understand." Emma walked to the door, inserted the key, and turned. A loud click echoed through the underground facility. The door hissed
open. Inside, dim lights flickered on, revealing a vast circular room lined with mirrors. But when Emma stepped forward, her reflection didn't move. Instead, she watched herself, a version of her, but older, more ruthless, wearing a bloodied lab coat, eyes cold, lips curled into a smirk. "Welcome, Subject Delta One," the reflection said, though its mouth didn't move. The voice came from hidden speakers. Emma stepped back. "You're not me." "No," the voice replied. "I'm the you we perfected before you broke protocol." The room suddenly brightened. Dozens of versions of Emma filled the mirrors, each one different. Some covered in burns, some bald, some crying, some laughing maniacally, but all of them unmistakably her. "What is this?" Emma whispered. The man beside her removed his mask. His face was weathered but familiar. "It's your family history. Every generation, one of you is born with the Ashford divergence, the ability to survive and evolve under psychological torture while retaining empathy." He pointed at the mirrors. "These are your failed paths. You are the first to wake up whole." Emma's voice cracked. "Why me?" He smiled. "Because the trials didn't break you, they built you." Behind them, the tanks began to drain. Children inside began to stir. Alarms sounded. "Containment breach in Sector 7. Override codes required. Initiate Protocol Lazarus." The facility was coming alive again, just as Emma's memories did. Flashes of injections, screaming in the dark, a lullaby sung by a faceless nurse. Emma turned to the man, now calm in the chaos. "How long do I have?" "Until the others remember who they are." He handed her a small device, shaped like a stopwatch but pulsing red. "This is the reset. You press it, you end everything, every subject, every test, even yourself." Emma held it tightly. "And if I don't?" "Then the Ashford Institute rises again with you as its queen." She looked at the mirrors one last time. Her failed selves stared back, pleading, mocking, weeping. Then she faced the children stumbling out of their tanks, and she said, "No more kings, no more queens." She crushed the device in her hand. The red pulse vanished. Lights dimmed. And somewhere far above, the roots of the forest shook. Emma stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by rows of tanks pulsing with pale green light. Each one was a nightmare in stasis. Children with tubes down their throats, wires threaded into their skin, eyelids fluttering despite deep sedation. A low hum emanated from the walls, like the Institute itself was breathing. The masked man stepped forward, removing his gloves one finger at a time. His voice was calm, measured. "You were never meant to wake up, Emma." She stared at him, fists clenched. "And yet, here I am." He gave a faint, admiring smile. "You've passed the first threshold. Cognitive awakening, emotional independence, pattern recognition under stress. Your father didn't get that far." Her jaw tightened. "Where is he?" He gestured toward the wall. A heavy steel panel retracted with a hiss, revealing a smaller chamber. Inside, a man sat slumped against the far wall, wrists shackled, eyes vacant. His face was sunken, beard overgrown, but unmistakably Thomas Richter. Emma took a step, but the man blocked her path. He failed. He resisted the imprinting protocols, spent years trying to shut us down. But that's the flaw, you see. Love, loyalty. We had to evolve. Emma's voice dropped to a growl. You turned children into weapons. He looked around at the tanks. Not weapons, mirrors. The world has monsters. We merely trained ours to walk upright. Then he handed her something small, cold, a key card, with her name etched into the plastic. You can freeze him, or you can join the program. Only one door opens. Emma froze. Was this a test? A manipulation? She looked again at the tanks. Faces so young. One of them looked like her. Suddenly, alarms blared. Unauthorized breach in Sector 7! The man stiffened. From the shadows, a woman emerged, her hair white, eyes sharp. Eloise Ashford, Emma whispered. The founder, herself. You weren't supposed to survive, Eloise said coldly. Emma stepped between her and the tanks. Neither were they. She threw the key card to the floor and pulled a vial from her coat. You taught me how to calculate probability, how to manipulate systems, how to hide code inside dreams. So guess what? She smashed the vial. I wrote my own ending. Gas hissed from vents above. Red lights turned violet. All around her the tanks began to stir. Monitors beeped. Children awoke. Eloise shrieked. What have you done? Emma turned to her, face calm. I freed the mirrors. Then the power failed, and the Ashford Institute, for the first time in decades, felt the chaos of consequences.